Hi, I'm Chris Stirewalt, and this must be Power Play because the music is stirring. Welcome, Internet. How are you doing? Okay, so here's the deal. Donald Trump had a bad week. He had a couple of bad weeks. But contrary to the narrative that is being barfed out by much of the political press, Donald Trump didn't do any worse in Wisconsin than he did in Illinois. Didn't do any worse in Wisconsin than he did in Michigan or New Hampshire or South Carolina or a lot of states. His share of the vote was static, stayed the same, 37% nationally, 35% in Wisconsin. Everything was the same there. What was different? Republicans changed their tune. A smaller field, Republican voters changed their tune, and in Wisconsin, not exactly the West Texas playboys there, voted for Ted Cruz by a large margin and gave him a commanding win over Donald Trump. Is the race different? Is this a one-off? What happens next? What in the heck? Talk to Doug Heye. Doug Heye is a salmon who swimmeth through the stream of the Republican establishment here in Washington, D.C. House, Senate, national, local, blah, 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 all the stuff, and he has the pocket square to prove it. Mark Alderman knows the same headwaters of the Democratic Party. He is the chairman of Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies, and he's worked for everybody and a bunch of people and raised a bunch of money for a lot of important Democrats. Okay, sure. Doug, starting with you, question. So Donald Trump put out a statement after his loss in Wisconsin that was weird.
It's charitable, but yes.
Puppets, Trojan horses, accusation of criminal activity against his enemies, and all of this stuff. But he's got a reset coming in New York. It was bad in Wisconsin because Waukesha County, which is not exactly Ted Cruz country, went 61% for Ted Cruz. That's not going to happen in New York.
No, it's not. And it's interesting. We're now using the term firewall for New York with Donald Trump. We've never talked about Donald Trump having a firewall in any state.
Right.
But look, he's obviously on the receiving end of a lot of bad publicity that seems to be, if not affecting him, his base doesn't go anywhere, but it's affecting the race. And I think where we really saw that is obviously in Wisconsin, but also just look at talk radio, local Wisconsin talk radio, Charlie Sykes being the obvious example. We've seen how that has really moved a lot of voters who were looking at Trump, weren't sure of the direction they wanted to go, into the Cruz camp, which is obviously very beneficial for Cruz. I would say also for Cruz, he showed the great taste not to wear a silly hat while he was in Wisconsin. That had to have helped him.
Cheese hat, always a mistake. All right, so Mark, Democrats are used to this kind of primary savagery, right? This is something. This is our side. Right. This is Democrats know this playbook. 1980. This goes way back of this sort of this degree of fractiousness and this degree of infighting. As you look at your Republican cousins as they are trying to figure this out, can this be put back together? Whomever wins, whether it's Trump or Cruz or a player to be named later, can they put this back together?
I don't see how you put Humpty Dumpty back together this time. You're going to go to Cleveland with 85% of the delegates, whomever they are, for either Trump or Cruz. There's no happy ending to that. It's one or the other, and the other walks out. Or it's some third guy and they both go. It's awful hard to see how this gets put back together.
Okay, so as Republicans try to figure out, there's a lot of hopium being smoked in precincts where it's like, and then Paul Ryan will ride a unicorn that will fly into the queue and da-da-da. So, but the reality for Republicans is this. If it's not, the most likely scenarios are that either Trump or Cruz win on the first ballot, that there are enough unpledged delegates to take either one over the 1237 mark and they get done. And then after that, the solution that those delegates are going to come up with is not going to be the pragmatic Speaker of the House. It's going to be something that is also fire-breathing, right?
Well, sure. I think you've seen a lot of Republicans, myself obviously being one of them, who says Donald Trump's a direction we can't go in any shape or form.
No matter what.
No matter what. But that doesn't really exist for Cruz. Cruz has made no bones about the fact that he's not popular in Washington. When he lost the Washington primary, he bragged about it.
Right.
But Republicans will coalesce around Ted Cruz. Now, there's still two things that we need to pay attention to in addition to all the primaries and the fantastic scenarios. One is in June, when a lot of these delegates start getting picked. We haven't had that yet. And who the delegate is in your given state, and the rules vary by each state.
And they're bound, in most of the states, they're bound for the first 2 ballots, and then on the 3rd ballot, they're released and run free into the wilderness. But in most of these places, their agency is deprived of them for the first 2 ballots. But as Doug points out, on the 3rd ballot, who you are matters. You don't have a voice. You don't get to decide who you're picking in the first 2 ballots. On the 3rd ballot, though.
Right. And then the other thing is the week before the convention in Cleveland, which it's the week before the convention is going to be a hotbed as well. That's when the RNC Rules Committee meets, and that's going to determine how the whole process works. And that's where, if you want to talk about, what kind of chicanery can happen, I think there'll be less than anybody really imagines. But all eyes will be on Cleveland the week before the convention, much less the convention.
People forget that the people who are delegates are politicians in their own right, too. If you are the chairwoman of the Women's Ladies Republican Auxiliary of Orange County, Virginia, you care what the fellow Lady Republicans of Orange County, Virginia think about your vote and what you do. You have your own matrix that you're considering.
You have your own matrix. You are a person in a chair in a convention hall. This isn't a video game the way it gets discussed. I've been there, a delegate, a number of times. They care about what's going on back home. They care about what's going on either side of them in that hall. They are very much flesh and blood, maybe some of them fire-breathing human beings. And the idea that this is going to somehow be done by remote control on some screen is a fantasy.
Life is always very simple until people get involved. Gentlemen, we're glad that you people got involved with us. We thank you for being here and for your patriotic, sagacious counsel. You, Internet, you're not always patriotic. You're not always sagacious, but you always keep us coming back. And we hope that you will come back for more Power Play real soon.